So I'm here at MarketingProfs B2BForum, and I'm here with Christopher Penn, who is another podcaster, but he's one that actually you should admire, and you should look at him as a veteran who has done so much for the marketing industry, one, but also to show us that taking time and investing and being consistent over time and knowing what your strategy is and just doing it. If you're struggling with your efforts, look towards this guy and say, what is different about him than me? And you'll find your answer. So how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I've been doing a lot of going through sessions and helping with some of the tech and stuff, helping record people's sessions and things. So yesterday was this heavy speaking day.
All right, so what were your topics here at the event?
So yesterday topic was building the data-driven customer journey. That's sort of been my theme for this year. How do we take this concept of customer journey, which is really difficult to begin with, and a lot of people are just kind of winging it. So how do we infuse that with data?
It's like Personas 2.0. We guess, and then we never like go back and actually validate or put real data in there. And so customer journey, it's usually like, well, where do we need them to go? And those are the steps that we list. And so I'm in the market for this, and then I'm ready to buy this, and then I bought this. That's not a journey anyone ever takes.
No, and most marketers are just scraping the word funnel off, just putting journey in, like, nope, that's not it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like horse. Nope, that's not a car. You just can't call it a car. It's still a horse.
And I don't know, when you grew up and what kind of books you read, but when I was in elementary school, the books that always intrigued me, I never really read them, but the ones I always reserved were the Choose Your Own Adventure books. Because I love that concept of getting to a page and it says you can flip to this page or this page. And it was always this, I get to choose my adventure, right? And I think that's where marketing and content is really starting to drive in that direction of, if you are taking somebody on a journey, guess what? They're going to get to crossroads and you're going to have to provide value both ways.
Yeah, no, I always read books that got banned.
So what do you guys talk about on your podcasts?
So with Marketing Over Coffee, the biggest thing we talk about is sort of what's new that we know is going to impact people's world. That if they don't take advantage of it, there's like the boat's there, the boat's about to leave. What do you need to know? A lot of the times it's stuff that's changing in platforms. So this past month, Google released its Optimize suite. So if you're familiar with Optimizer, Maximizer, Optimizely, Test and Target, now Google's got one. And for now, it's free. And it integrates very tightly with Google Analytics. So you can pass audiences back and forth. You can do multivariate testing, all kinds of interesting stuff. It's one of those things. You got to try it. You got to see if it's a fit for your organization. They released Data Studio about the same time. Again, another integral part of the Google ecosystem if you're bought in there. We will often talk about things we see people doing wrong. So everything simple from like, this trade show badge has my name on one side. So if I'm, half the time I'm walking around with it like this, it's one of those things you should probably try and fix. I love the MarketingProfs B2BForum. It's a wonderful show. I've been to some shows, and I'm scheduled to speak at some shows that are not doing it right. Yeah. So a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah, and so when you're talking about Google and some of these tools that people are, or that companies are releasing, how can people, when they hear about it, start to not get on the syndrome of, ooh, shiny, let me go buy and do? How can they take time, like you guys do, and actually analyze it and sit down? What are some of those steps that they can do to get that done?
So I would say it's a couple things. One, you always have to be reading and researching every day, period, just to know what's happening. And there's a lot to keep a track of, but after a while of swimming in the information stream, you start to get a feel for what's going to be impactful and what's not. And the second thing is sort of, a lot of people jump into tools with how do I use this thing? How do I plug this thing in? The shiny object syndrome. When really, you have to go the reverse order. Why, what, how? Why is this tool important? What does it do? And then how do I use it? And if you don't have a need for A/B testing your website, you can skip the what and the how. But if you just leap from how to how, you never stop to think about why you're doing that. That's when you get caught up on the treadmill.
Yeah. And so I can imagine that you've run into a lot of marketers over the years, and do you find that a lot of them kind of just are coming back with the exact same problems over and over and over again, and we're stuck in this weird Groundhog Day moment that we're hoping to get out of?
So it's not the individual marketers, it's actually the organizations. What happens is people start out, what's this social media thing? Well, they make some advances in their career, then they leave and go to a different company. And some new junior people come in that organization. What's the social media thing? And that's the treadmill that we see. I was speaking yesterday on this customer journey thing, and I said at some point, how many people in the audience here have goals set up in Google Analytics? I know most people raised their hands. I said, how many of you have a dollar value set to those goals? And all the hands went down. I'm like, we were talking about this 7 years ago. Mm-hmm. Why is this still the case? Well, because the people who were in the audience 7 years ago have moved on, and now they're more senior, and so now they're not doing implementation, and they've forgotten to pass along the knowledge they gained 7 years ago, so companies are permanently stuck on this treadmill.
Yeah, and it's epidemic, and I think we do need to get into this process of going back to the basics. And that's one of the things I talk about in Agile marketing is, in software development, we had this period of pair programming that was like awkward. It was like I'm wearing two different socks, and it was weird, but it was so beneficial to be able to sit down with somebody who was in that development process with me. Maybe it was a senior guy and he was teaching me as a junior, or it was somebody in another field that was teaching me how to do that.
Yep.
I don't think marketers are doing that enough because we're too busy actually doing other things.
I think that's definitely true at some of the larger organizations, but I think an awful lot of marketers are in a situation where they're it, right? You're the marketing department of one, or maybe it's you and you got two really junior people. And so people don't have that mentor. I mean, it's one of the reasons why we're here at this event. This event is very much about connecting with your marketing community because a lot of people don't have that. And for good or ill, companies tend to treat marketing as an afterthought for some strange reason. It's like the first budget to get cut. And like, well, so let's see, my company's dying. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut off any source of new business.
Yeah.
I don't know why COOs, CEOs, and CFOs make that decision, but they do. And so Agile and the idea of non-waterfall style operations, it's hard to get people to even have a staff, much less be able to organize it that way.
Yeah, I remember my first time I was laid off. It was I was on a research and development team, and the guy who laid me off was on stage the next day at a conference, and he was going to show off the tool that I was the only one that was developing. He goes, "Where's the guy that built this tool?
You fired him.
You laid him off yesterday." And like, oh, that's not good. So
have a nice mug of Schadenfreude.
Exactly. So, take a pay cut first before you lay off your team. But no, I think that you're hearing a lot at this show the idea that people are interested in podcasting and they are looking at it, but you feel like the shiny object syndrome's coming because it's. Have you ever been behind a mic? Have you ever tried to have a conversation? Does your audience even listen to podcasts? Or are you going to be constantly introducing the idea to people?
Your CMO just handed you a global campaign with a short deadline and the request to lead with video. You're given a team of you and, well, you. This campaign is asking for 15 videos that need to create awareness and engagement across multiple online destinations, drive demand and lead gen, and measure performance. Whew, calm down. Everything's gonna be okay. We've got you covered. First things first, we're going to set you up with Video Marketing Suite, which will allow you to access everything you need from a single online location. And it's made for marketers, so you can easily run your campaign yourself. With just a couple of clicks, your videos are uploaded, automatically optimized to work across all screens and devices. You can distribute to your social channels to reach audiences where they are. And then drive them back to a customized branded video portal using Gallery, which you can create quickly, easily, and in multiple languages. For live events, Brightcove offers an easy-to-use live streaming interface, and after you're done streaming, trim the video and post it on demand for people who missed the event. We'll even help you create interactive elements to optimize video for lead generation. To make sense of all this, our analytics platform tracks a number of statistics in an easy-to-use UI. This data feeds into leading marketing automation platforms. You can see who watched and for how long, and what other content they consumed. Then you know what to create and who it's for. We're Brightcove. We'll help ensure that your video marketing is a success.
What would be a level of encouragement that you give a marketer that says, I really want to do podcasting to help them get started?
I wouldn't. I would say, why do you want to do a podcast? What function does it serve? And then we can worry about how to do it. But really, a podcast is a form of media, which means that you are transforming your marketing department into a media company. If you are not prepared to be a media company, which means you publish regularly, frequently, and always on time. One thing I would love to say in one of my How to Podcasting talks is, does anyone remember, folks who have a little more gray in their hair, anyone remember what day and time Seinfeld was on? People raise their hands, Thursday at 9 on NBC, right? Like, why do you know that? 17 years later, why do you know that? Regular, frequent, high-value content at a specific time. I said, if you're not prepared to do that with your podcast, don't do a podcast. Do something else, because you don't have that institutional discipline. Or hire someone from broadcast media who is used to that. So if you really want a podcast, you have to figure out what the format is. You have to figure out what's going to be valuable to the audience. Because again, marketers have a tendency to try and be, they have a tendency to be very sender-centric. We're an awesome company. Check out this awesome podcast. Buy this awesome company to buy our awesome products and services. Nobody cares. What problem are you going to solve? And also recognizing the very intimate nature of podcasting. A lot of people treat it like every other form of media. Hey, everybody who's reading our blog. Hey, everyone who's listening to our podcast. Well, no, it's when someone's watching and listening to this episode, it's you and me, and they're literally putting us inside their skull, right? They're sticking an earbud inside their ear. So it's a very intimate relationship, and marketers have to understand and be respectful of that relationship. Your listeners are giving you permission to invade their heads. Use that permission very wisely.
Absolutely. And, I like when people talk about the show, like, oh, how often are you going to release? Like once a week? And it's like, we're going to come back with 30 shows in 6 months, 7 months. If I say MarketingProfs B2B Forum back in October, you're in May not thinking about it. So my cadence has to be a little bit faster than that, right? And it has to be, almost like the Netflix style of I'm dropping a whole season.
Yep.
But I know that going into it. I know that in my editorial process. I know I've got to work really hard for the next month or two to get this content out. And then I better be ready to continue to feed that audience when it's ready, because there is a time period that they'll wait for a season to come back. But even Serial, they're finding that like season 2 was not as good as season 1. And people are like, all right, you got a couple more months. You better start coming out with something else.
Yep.
And, your audience will not wait for you forever. They'll move on.
Yeah, well, you raise a really interesting point, too. The Netflix problem, insofar that it is a problem, is that people expect large volumes of content. It's not, like the idea of episodic TV. There still is obviously, stuff on Fox and NBC and ABC, but people are much more accustomed to, okay, here's all of House of Cards, and they can binge watch it an entire weekend, and then they are ready for the next block of content. Game developers struggle with this. I play World of Warcraft, and people are like, okay, when's the next expansion? Okay, the expansion's here. Okay, when's the next expansion pack? When's the next patch? And the developers are like, it took us 18 months to build this thing. We're not going to do another one tomorrow.
Yeah.
And of course, they get, just diminishing subscriber numbers because people are like, well, you're not keeping it fresh. I'm going to go play Guild Wars. Yeah. Well, Guild Wars releases a patch every 2 weeks, but it's kind of incremental.
Yeah. And I mean, I was an Ultima Online guy, and then EverQuest for a while, and then World of Warcraft. And you're right. It's like the people who leveled up so quickly, they're looking for more places to go, but then the people who are new to the games, they're struggling because all these senior characters are in there. And I think that's the way podcasts are too. And like you said, the episodic things that, we make room for other people. We evolve our shows. We become staples in their their areas, and shows like yours that are meaningful for a very long time stick around, like the news, and other shows can come around and then they can go away after a while, right? They can actually have a beginning and an end.
Yeah. One of the best examples, I think, of a long-running show that does things really well is the Manager Tools podcast.
Yes.
Where they have a set of basics. Like, here's the evergreen 30 episodes you should start with. And they will refresh those very occasionally. But for the most part, there's only so many ways you can do a good job interview for someone. And then they have the episodic stuff that happens more regularly. And I would say if you're going to do a podcast, that's a really good model to follow. Here's the core stuff that no matter who tunes in, this should be the first 5 episodes you listen to. And then you can get the regular show in addition to that. But you want to have that base of stuff that gives people a good introduction, because like you're talking about, World of Warcraft has had World of Warcraft, Burning Crusade, Wrath of the Lich King, Cataclysm, Mists of Pandaria, Warlords of Draenor, and now Legion. If you're a new player, you're like, well, what do I start with, right? There's essentially 7 games to play.
Yeah.
If you have a podcast, even one like this one or Marketing Over Coffee, where do I start? Do I start at episode 1? No, that was 9 years ago. Don't start there. Start with today's episode. But then, how do you get them inculcated into the culture of the show? The starter pack is a great idea.
Today, real time is the only time that counts. To stay relevant, you have to stay ahead. Your customers want the right information, right now, wherever they are. So how do you meet the demands of today's customers? By marketing in context. Context accounts for a customer's interaction with your brand. So each touch builds on the next, creating more meaningful experiences for your customers. At Sitecore, we call this context marketing. To do it well, you need marketing technology that has 3 things: contextual intelligence, content management, and omni-channel automation. Contextual intelligence gives you the information you need about your consumers, so the content you manage is more relevant and is automatically delivered wherever your customers are. The Sitecore Experience platform was built for context marketing, so you can create a more personalized customer experience. Demand more from your marketing technology. Demand more from marketing. Own the experience. Sitecore.
Yeah, and I love that. And I think, when we see Pokemon Go and it's facing the same thing, it's like, don't worry, they got so many expansion packs waiting and so many new ways that they can interact with the customers. But when you start to look at like AR and VR and things like that, and you're considering podcasts, like take a step back and say, like you said, is podcast the right vehicle?
Yeah, why?
Or,
what's the goal?
yeah, or does your, maybe your voice every single week might not be what they want. How else can you do it? How else can you look at things like Pokemon Go and say, how can we interact with the environment, the person?
The other thing you could give as really solid advice is run a blog. Run a blog for 6 months. Show that you can produce regular, frequent content. And then guess what? Go back, start reading aloud your blog posts. Try that out. I mean, I'm not saying that should be your podcast, but try that out. Can you handle the production schedule of producing that much audio? Only then, okay, I'm ready to podcast. Because what typically happens is the first 10 episodes you do are terrible. Throw them out. So get those first 10 out of the way with practice with the content you already have.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, I see podcasting and like the video podcast, right? It's an evolution. It's something that it was like, I started a blog, I loved it. I started podcasting, I loved it. I started the video, and now I get video, audio, and then I can go back and actually create blog posts from it. And it's a fun way to kind of just keep going and continuing that conversation. But yeah, I can't think of a podcaster that's really good that didn't start blogging first.
Exactly.
Well, I want to thank you for your time. And where can people get more information about Marketing Over Coffee and then what you do?
Sure. So you can find Marketing Over Coffee, unsurprisingly, at marketingovercoffee.com. By the way, important tip, buy a domain name that can be understood over the air by voice. Yes. So if you got weird letters missing and dots and dashes, no one's going to find your show. You can find me at ChristopherSPenn.com, and more than happy to have you subscribe to my email list and subscribe to Marketing Over Coffee.
Awesome. Well, thanks for your time today.
Thank you.